Jaya Shriman Narayana. Jaya Bhagavan Shri Krishna. Jaya Shri Guru. Sanatana Dharma Jayate. Dharma Rashtra Jayate. Om Tad Vishnu Paramam Padam. Shri Vishnu. Shri Vishnu. Shri Vishnu. Om Hari Om. Namaste, everyone, and welcome to our latest live stream. This is a live stream satsangha that is presented to you by the International Sanatana Dharma Society, otherwise known as the ISDS. The ISDS is an international movement that is designed to bring about a restoration of Sanatana Dharma in our world today. It is a movement that is certainly spiritually based. That is indeed the foundation of everything that the ISDS does, is Vedic spirituality practiced in its most authentic form. However, our vision is one that is ever expansive. Our vision is indeed the restoration of a global Vedic civilization in our world today. That is what the ISDS does, and as the guru of the ISDS, it is my very, very humble privilege to thank all of the sincere volunteers, all of the sincere students, disciples, well-wishers of the ISDS for all of your help over the years. I am only one person. I'm very limited in my scope and my capacity as a finite human being. It is only with your help that you have given me over the years and that you continue to give me, that we as a movement are doing what we are doing, are accomplishing what we are accomplishing. So in absolute humility and sincerity, I thank all of you for any help that you've given, big or small. It can even be the smallest of help. But I thank you eternally for all of your help over the years. With that, before we proceed to the talk that I'm going to be giving today, The Way of the Vaishnava, I first just want to say a few things. First, if you have not yet done so, please subscribe to this channel. You will see, if this is your first time here, that this is a very unique channel. There is no other channel like this anywhere on social media. Please subscribe to this channel. Please like this video. If you want to wait till the end, so you have a reason truly for liking it, that's fine. Please wait. But at some point, please like this video. I would ask also that you please share the link of this video as much as you can on your own social media. The last thing I want to say is please visit our website, dharmacentral.com. Exactly as it sounds, dharmacentral.com. When you visit Dharma Central, what you will see is it is a tremendous resource for this Vedic path known as Sanatana Dharma. You'll see that our books are available there, and our books are books that are indeed designed to explain to the modern world what is Sanatana Dharma in the most authentic way imaginable. So our books are there. You will see that we have an email list that is there that you can please feel free to join. You will see also that there is membership information. So if you would like to join this movement that I just spoke about, the International Sanatana Dharma Society, and become a monthly tithing member, and in that way thus help me and help us to continue doing what we're doing, I and all of our devotees would be very greatly appreciative if you could please do that. With that, I am now going to jump into the talk for today, the way of the Vaishnava. Now, I suspect that the vast majority of individuals in our audience knows what that term, Vaishnava, means. For those who don't, however, and I have to always assume whenever I give a talk like this that there are many people who are perhaps here for the first time and don't necessarily understand all of this Sanskrit terminology. The term Vaishnava comes from Vishnu, and it means a devotee of Vishnu. A Vaishnava is a devotee of Vishnu. Now, this, of course, is the question. Who is Vishnu, precisely? Well, the way that we know this is not sentimentality, not emotion, not merely, well, my parents brought me up in this tradition, this was the caste-oriented path that I followed, therefore I am following this path. No, rather the way that we know who is Vishnu is by looking at the Vedic scriptures. And the Vedic scriptures all throughout are very clear on the fact that Vishnu is indeed the Supreme Personality of Godhead. To quote Prabhupada, Vishnu, otherwise known as Sriman Narayana, and all of his avatars, all of his incarnations who come here to help us, whether it's Rama or Krishna or Narasingha or Kalki who is yet to come, and on and on. So many different avatars who come. Vishnu and what is termed the Vishnu Tattva, that is every aspect of Vishnu, including the avatars. This is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In other words, this is indeed Brahman. This is the highest absolute. So thus, when we call ourselves Vaishnavas, this is not a sectarian term. It's very unfortunate that for the last, roughly 200 years, since more modern scholars have been looking at Vedic spirituality and radically misunderstanding it for the last 200 years, unfortunately, many of these scholars will tend to say that, these various terms like Vaishnava are simply sectarian in nature. That is not the case. What a Vaishnava is very specifically an individual who wishes to know the highest absolute, to surrender to that absolute, and to express devotion toward that absolute, what is called bhakti or devotion. So that is what a Vaishnava is. It is a devotee of Vishnu. And again, how do we know this? No, not sentiment, not, we kind of like how Vishnu looks over this god, this goddess, etc., etc. Or, we like the stories of Vishnu a little bit better, or on and on. The way that we determine who is God is not like picking a favorite flavor of ice cream. Some people will like chocolate. A lot of people like chocolate. Some people will like vanilla. Some people will like on and on and on. There are so many, dozens and dozens of different flavors. Well, the way that we determine philosophically and spiritually, religiously, theologically, scripturally, who is God is, again, not that we just kind of, I like this one, so I'll call this God. Because the truth of the matter is, of course, this leads to a very slippery slope, in which if we can simply choose any Vedic god or goddess and say, that's the one who I am claiming is the supreme absolute, why stop with just the Vedic gods and goddesses? Why not any god and goddess? And let's go further. If it's simply a matter of our own personal subjective choice, like picking ice cream, why stop at gods and goddesses? Why not say, that tree is my God? Why not say that anything is my God? That chair is my God? And on and on and on. Why not say ultimately, of course, as many New Age individuals say, I am my God. I am God. You see, this is the difficulty, is that when we choose what we designate as the supreme absolute, and we think that we have the ability to indeed simply choose ourselves, well, then there's no limit to what we can choose, and what we ultimately will choose will be Maya. If we leave it only up to subjective opinion, we ultimately will choose illusion. So thus, how do we know? How do we know? Om Tad Vishnu Paramam Padam Sada Pashyanti Surayaha Diviva Chakshura Tatama. We look at the actual Vedic scriptures, if you are a follower of Sanatana Dharma. If you're not, well, then that's a different story. But if you claim that you are a yogi, following a Vedic path, following Sanatana Dharma in any way whatsoever, the very definition of an individual who is following Sanatana Dharma, technically, philosophically, accepted throughout the totality of time, is that they are Vaidika. In other words, they follow the Vedas, the Vedic scriptures. Now, I just quoted you a very, very well-known verse from Rig Veda, and this is 1:22:20. Very well known, and there are many, many, many scriptures from throughout the four Vedas, from throughout the Upanishads, from throughout the Brahmanas, from throughout Ramayana, Mahabharata, all the Puranas, and I can go on and on and on. Yoga Sutras, for that matter, and on and on and on. There are hundreds, if not thousands, of verses from the Vedic scriptures that proclaim with one united voice that the one supreme absolute is Sriman Narayana, Vishnu. Now, it will use different names, and that's no problem. Indeed, there's one very famous scripture called Sri Vishnu Sahasranama that has 1,000 names of Vishnu. The important point is that the Vedic scriptures point to Vishnu Tattva, that is, to Vishnu or Narayana, all his avatars, expansions, etc. Whether it's Krishna, whether it's Rama, etc. It's ultimately Vishnu. It's ultimately Vishnu Tattva. And again, the Vedic scriptures speak with one voice. Now, I quoted you the Sanskrit for this verse from Rig Veda. Let me give you the English. And this is the translation. Vishnu occupies the paramount position. All the other deities look always to his feet. And again, this is one of hundreds and hundreds and thousands of verses, including the totality, not one or two verses in the Bhagavad Gita, but the totality of the Bhagavad Gita. Again, points to Vishnu Tattva as the supreme. So this is why we call ourselves Vaishnavas, is that our goal is indeed to go directly to that supreme, to know God, truly the absolute, whatever you wish to term that which is truly the absolute, what in Sanskrit philosophically is called Brahman. This is our goal as Vaishnavas, and this is what it means to be a Vaishnava. And this is the way of the Vaishnava, is indeed to not take detours, to not go 3/4 of the way, to not get distracted by this god, this goddess, this mystic power, this ability to subdue people in this material world, this ability to make money, etc., etc., etc. The Vaishnava is an individual who prays for God's mercy that he will have no distractions and that he will be able to focus all of his devotional, meditative awareness upon one thing and only one thing, and that is the absolute. That is the absolute. That is what it means to be a Vaishnava. For myself, I have been a Vaishnava all my life. There is no other religion, indeed, I can say, that I have ever practiced in my life other than Vaishnavism. There is no other religion that I have ever practiced in my life other than Vaishnavism. You know, some people, unfortunately, not being very intelligent, make the assumption that because I am a Westerner born in America, that I myself must have been, practicing Christianity, let's say, previous to following Sanatana Dharma. That is not the case. I have actually never practiced Christianity in my entire life, even as a child. My parents were Catholic, but they were nominal Catholics. They didn't take the religion very seriously. They didn't really take me to church. Indeed, I am not baptized. If you're Catholic, you can attest to what that means, that I am not baptized as a Catholic. So thus, I have never practiced Christianity or any other religion. The only religion that I myself have practiced in the totality of my life has been Vaishnava Dharma, the path of the Vaishnava, the way of the Vaishnava. So this is what I practice. This is what the International Sanatana Dharma Society teaches. Indeed, we teach Sanatana Dharma, which we see as non-distinct from Vaishnava Dharma, because again, our goal is to know the ultimate, to know that absolute. So thus, we're very unapologetic about this. The International Sanatana Dharma Society, I'm sorry to tell you, is not a pan-Hindu organization. It's not a free-for-all where, anyone can join and, just choose whatever you want to worship and, it doesn't really matter, doesn't really matter, doesn't really matter. For those who have been with me for some time, you know what I have said about that term when someone is claiming to talk about spirituality, that, it doesn't really matter. If those words come out of your mouth and you claim that you're a spiritual person or philosophically oriented and you say, it really doesn't matter about an important philosophical proposition, then that's sad. That's very unfortunate. But no, the ISDS is indeed a purely Vaishnava movement. Our goal is indeed to know Srimad Narayana, is to know that absolute in as authentic, as unadulterated, as pure, and as effective a way as is possible, thus giving us liberation from Maya, from illusion, and giving us devotion, devotional consciousness, and devotional meditative awareness of God in such a way that we have achieved the perfection of the very Atman itself, of our very soul itself. That is what it means to be a Vaishnava. That is the way of the Vaishnava. Now, having said all that, in addition to the one verse that I just spoke about from Rig Veda, we're actually going to look at 3 other verses that in a more practical, very philosophical and practical way, actually, speak about what is indeed the way of the Vaishnava, what is Vaishnava Dharma. So let's dive into these verses now. And the first one that we're going to look at, again, in addition to the one that we just looked at, is from the Vishnu Purana. Speaking of Vishnu, the Vishnu Purana is a very, very important Purana. It is recognized as a Sattvika Purana, that is a Purana of pure goodness. It is a Purana that is one of the foundations of Vaishnava Dharma, of the way of the Vaishnava. When you have a chance, I would recommend that you get a copy and read the Vishnu Purana. It has been translated, unfortunately, a very long time ago, but I believe there are 1 or 2 modern translations that are a little bit difficult to get, but if you can find them, they're quite good. So this is from Vishnu Purana 1:22-53. And the verse proceeds thus. Just as the illumination of a fire, which is situated in one place, is spread all over, the energies of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Para-brahman, are spread all over this universe. So thus, this provides one of the theological and philosophical foundations of both Sanatana Dharma in general, because truthfully, there's no follower of Sanatana Dharma who would in any way really disagree with what this verse just said. But then very specifically, for, again, those individuals who are Vaishnavas, those individuals who wish to not play games and to know the absolute, to know God. This is a very, very important, very foundational verse. And it is speaking very specifically about Vishnu. Indeed, the reason why this is called the Vishnu Purana is that the totality of the Vishnu Purana is dedicated to Vishnu and to demonstrating how Vishnu is indeed the Supreme Being. So let's go through this a little bit. What this is pointing to is indeed the omnipresent reality of Vishnu, the omnipresent reality of God, of Srimad Narayana. You know, we've talked about this before, about how in Sanatana Dharma we are panentheists. Again, as always, not pantheists. Any human being, whether they are a know-nothing or whether they have 10 PhDs, if there's any human being who ever tries to convince you that Sanatana Dharma is pantheistic, that is a fool who really didn't study this path in any deep way whatsoever. Rather, we believe in panentheism. That is, the teaching that God is both simultaneously transcendent to this material world, which we've looked at dozens of verses that have shown this in the past, while at the same time, God is immanent within all things. There is nothing conceivable or perceivable that we can point to in which God is not present. Well, this verse is not only agreeing with this, but it's explaining in a way using this metaphor of the illumination of fire to show how this is the case. So let's go through this very quickly. Just as the illumination of a fire, which is situated in one place, is spread all over. Now let's stop there. So the idea is that, of course, when you see a fire, let's say you go camping and you create some sort of fire, well, of course, the fire itself is situated in one place. There is something called the fire. But at the same time, the influence of that fire spreads far beyond what is merely the actual geographical location, the locus of that fire. So the illumination of that fire is something that spreads beyond, to the point where, depending upon how dark it is outside, you can start a nice roaring fire at night in a campground, and you can see the illumination of that fire sometimes from miles away. Sometimes for miles you can see it. So in the same way, God being God, God has his personality. God has his, as I always say, and this is a very philosophical term, his locus of being. So there is indeed God, but God's influence, in the same way that the illumination of fire is spread all throughout, in the same way, God's influence is also spread far beyond what we call that locus of being of God. Now, the thing is, the fire is limited. So, of course, if you're 1,000 miles away from the fire, let's say, you probably won't see anything. But you can be an infinite distance from God, and God's influence still will be there. Why? Well, do I need to say why? God is unlimited. Again, a fire is a limited thing. I'm a limited thing. This cup is a limited thing, etc. God is unlimited by definition, by nature, by essential nature. God is unlimited. That being the case, unlike the fire, whose influence just goes for some distance, there is no limit. There is quite literally no demarcation, no outward bound by which we can say, God's influence only goes up to this degree, but not further. So thus God is indeed present, ever present, omnipresent in all things. So this is what this verse is saying. And very specifically, the energies of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This means all the Shaktis. That means ourselves as well. You see, it's interesting. Essentially, existence itself consists, one could say, of only two things. And that is Sharira, Shariran, to quote Ramanuja, the great philosopher Ramanuja. That is, there is God, and then there are the energies of God. And interestingly, we ourselves, as Atmans, we are also considered to be the energy of God. Indeed, the technical Sanskrit term for the totality of all individual souls is Tatashta Shakti. Shakti means energy. We also are the energy of God. Materiality is the energy of God, and then there are further energies of God. So essentially, all of reality consists of two things, God and God's energies. And we are one of the energies of God. That's it. That's reality. So that is what this verse is saying. And again, these energies are spread all over this universe. In other words, everywhere. Very nice. So that's from Vishnu Purana. Now let's go on just a little bit more. Just have two more verses to do, and we're doing fine with time, actually. We'll have some time for some nice questions and answers. Let's go on now to the Srimad Bhagavatam, another very well-recognized Vedic scripture, followed by hundreds of millions of people, at least, at the very least. And this is Srimad Bhagavatam 11:2-48. And this verse proceeds as follows. Even while engaging his senses in contact with their objects, one who sees this whole world as the energy of Lord Vishnu is neither repelled nor elated. He is, indeed, the greatest among devotees. So beautiful verse. The reason why I chose this verse, and I could have chosen, again, hundreds and hundreds, if not more, is because it follows very nicely the previous verse from the Vishnu Purana, again continuing with the theme of God's energies. So let's look at this verse a little bit. Even while engaging his senses in contact with their objects. This is speaking of beings who are presently in illusion, in maya, in avidya, in ignorance, who are within the material world. All living beings, because all living beings engage their senses in contact with objects. Is this not the case? This is the case for humans, this is the case for dogs, this is the case for cows, this is the case for insects, this is the case for the gods. Every living being, regardless of their species, has some set of senses or another. Not every species, of course, has 5 or 6 senses. Some have more, some have less, but we all have senses. And this is how we interact with one another and with the objects of this world. So we can understand from this very first clause that the individuals being spoken of are indeed individuals who are presently in illusion. So even while engaging his senses in contact with their objects. Now, that individual one who sees this whole world as the energy of Lord Vishnu. Now let's stop there. I know the sentence goes on, but I want to comment just on that first, what I just read to you. So who is this individual? Who is being spoken of here? Again, this is not speaking about everyone. This is speaking about those rare humans who have divine vision, who have the ability to have this vision of what is the actual nature of this world, and indeed seeing the world not merely as what is immediately presented to our senses, in just a very concrete, very gross sort of way, but no, that individual who has a deeper vision, and who thus has the ability to understand that, again, as I said before, everything that I perceive, everything that I conceive, ultimately is the energy of Lord Vishnu, is ultimately the energy of God. And thus, in that way, this is an individual. What's being spoken of here is this is an individual who is working toward, or who has possibly even attained, God consciousness, Krishna consciousness, Vishnu consciousness. An individual who sees the world, again, not just as a dead thing, as scientists or atheists do, that, oh yes, this world is meaningless, it's just a bunch of dead matter, I'm dead matter, you're dead matter. No, this is for an individual who is intelligent, who is sensitive. This is for an individual who has true vision, beyond merely the eyes, beyond merely the actual 5 senses, 6 if you include the mind. This is for an individual who is indeed a spiritual practitioner and now understands that this material world is certainly what is there presented empirically to my eyes, but more beyond that, ultimately it is energetic in form, and it's not just impersonal energy floating for no reason, it is God's energy. So thus everything that I'm experiencing ultimately is the energy of a person. And I should speak about this for just a moment as well. This is a theme that I repeat again and again, and that I will for the rest of my life, and that is that we indeed are personalists. Vaishnavas are personalists. We believe that God ultimately is indeed a person. So thus, when we say this energy, that ultimately everything that we see around us is energy, the next question, again, for an intelligent person, for a philosophically inquisitive individual, is whose energy is it? And ultimately, it is the energy of a person. And that person, according to this, is indeed Lord Vishnu, Sri Vishnu. Now, when an individual has this realization, now we'll go on. That person is neither repelled nor elated. In other words, they are in equipoise. In other words, they are an individual who traverses this world, who traverses their path in this world at peace, in calm, neither becoming agitated and angry, not becoming too elated. When you meet such an individual, what you meet is an individual who pretty much approaches all things with calm, with balance, with equipoise, understanding that, yes, this is the nature of this world, that the nature of this world is indeed diversity, and with diversity, there is good, there is bad. Diversity doesn't mean that all things are equal. That sadly is one of the mantras, one of the anti-mantras of today's age. No, diversity in this world means that things will approach you that you don't want, and other things will approach you that you do want. But regardless of what happens to you when you traverse this world, because you understand that ultimately it is God who is behind all things, you approach everything with peace. You have a sense of positive detachment. Positive detachment. So this is what this sentence is saying. And then, very, very important last sentence. See, when we come across such sentences, very often we'll just kind of read it real quick and, oh, that's nice, but not much meaning, and then we'll go on. No. There is not one verse, there is not one sentence, there is not one clause, there is not one word in the totality of the Vedic scriptures that does not have deep meaning. This last sentence, he is indeed the greatest among devotees. Who, again, this individual we're talking about, who has divine vision, who has the ability to see not just the immediate. See, that's what animals are like. They see the immediate, but they don't think philosophically, they don't think abstractly, etc. And it's so sad how we will encounter so many humans, again, atheists, who have the same lack of vision, who have just immediate perception and in a very animal-like sort of way. If it's not hitting them in the face, they don't think about it. If it's not hitting them in the face, it doesn't exist. Well, this is what the atheist takes pride in. Again, radical empiricism. And it's very sad. Philosophically, really, if you could even call it that, this is why atheists really operate on the level of animals. Because that's how animals operate. But rather, an individual who is a yogi, an individual who is spiritual, an individual who, again, has a deeper mind and heart and soul, has the ability to go infinitely beyond merely the immediate. And that is who this last sentence is speaking about. That individual is indeed the greatest among devotees. Now again, we need to take this seriously. What this Vedic scripture is saying is, you, no, not the person behind you, not anyone else, you who are listening to me right now, you who are watching this live stream, you become this person because that is the greatest of persons. This is the greatest thing that you can become, an individual who has this sort of divine vision. So this is a call to you. That individual is the greatest among devotees. Now let's go on to the very last of these verses, and this is again from Srimad Bhagavatam. You see all the time I love quoting from Srimad Bhagavatam because it is truly an amazing scripture. And this is from 12:3:47. And this verse proceeds thusly. Just as fire applied to gold removes any discoloration caused by traces of other metals, Lord Vishnu within the heart purifies the minds of the yogis. Very nice, beautiful verse. So again, this verse is continuing to explain what is the way of the Vaishnava. That is what this entire talk is about, is what does it mean to practice the path of the Vaishnava. And let me say, before I even talk about this verse, Vaishnava Dharma is the most ancient expression of Sanatana Dharma in existence. Again, doesn't matter what all the contending and arguing scholars might try to say. Some will agree, some will disagree. It doesn't matter what sectarian sort of sentiments people will have, and they'll say, no, that's not true. No, my path. No. How do we know this? How is it that I can say this very confidently? Again and again and again, we go to the scriptures. The Vedic scriptures, going back to the most ancient layer of Vedic scriptures itself, the Veda Samhitas, what are sometimes called the Vedas themselves, Rig Veda, Yajur Veda, Sama Veda, Atharva Veda. These four Vedas speak with one voice in saying that Narayana is the Supreme. So thus, Vaishnava Dharma is indeed the most ancient path of all. But now, let's look at this. What this is saying very specifically is, this is showing precisely how meditating upon Lord Vishnu very specifically has a positive, purifying spiritual effect upon the meditating yogi. Now, if an individual claims to be a Vedic practitioner, it doesn't get any more important than this. If an individual is indeed a yogi who is steeped, who is engaged in the sadhana of meditation, it is very specifically in accordance with this verse, by meditating upon Vishnu, by meditating upon Sriman Narayana, that indeed we will achieve purification. And that is the goal of yoga, bar none. That is the goal of yoga, indeed to purify ourselves of our anarthas, of our maya, of our illusion, of our avidya, of our ignorance, etc., of all of the past traumas that we've had in this life and previous lives, of all of the negative attributes that we have within, whether it's anger, whether it's hatred, whether it's fear, etc., etc., etc. And not merely to purify ourselves by negating all of these mayic elements that are within us, but then positively speaking, purify ourselves by indeed now being in the presence of God Himself and becoming like unto God. Now listen to this very carefully. Don't make the mistake of now saying to yourself, oh, Acharyaji has now become an Advaitin. No, at no point do we become God. Philosophically speaking, if you've studied serious philosophy, not pop philosophy, not taken a Philosophy 101 class, if you've studied serious philosophy, the idea, the very propositional statement, to become God, is a contradiction in terms. God does not become God. By definition, God always is God. So, all that being said, it is not that we become God, but we become like unto God. In other words, God, because we are now focusing upon Sri Vishnu in meditation, in devotional meditation, Sri Vishnu now begins to have a positive influence upon us. It's quite literally like we are now sitting under the healing sun and being affected by the sun, getting vitamin D, etc., all of the pranic elements that we need from the sun itself. In the same way, when we meditate upon Vishnu in our minds, which is how you meditate, it's not merely that you purify yourself in the negation of that which is not, of that which is foreign to you. It's not merely that that is what happens. But positively speaking, you become like unto God, meaning that you are now influenced positively by the very power, by the very being of God Himself. So thus, that is what this is saying. Let's go through this very quickly, because I've just explained the verse. But just to prove that I've explained the verse, let's go through this. It gives this very interesting analogy. Just as fire, which is applied to gold, removes any discoloration caused by traces of other metals. Now, let's hold on. By this analogy, what is being discussed is sadhana. So, you are the gold. You are the gold. But being an illusion, you're not pure gold. There are traces of other elements, traces of other sorts of metals that are there. And how do you purify gold? You apply fire. That fire is God. That fire is God. You see how now we get back to the very first verse that we looked at from the Vishnu Purana, where also it described God as that fire who has illumination and thus is omnipresent. Well, now we're getting back to the very same analogy, where, yes, God is like that fire, which you must apply the fire to the gold. In other words, it is by meditating very specifically upon Sri Vishnu, upon Sriman Narayana. It is by focusing all of our awareness, all of our concerns, all of our surrender at the feet of Sriman Narayana, that in the same way that the fire purifies the gold and gets rid of any impure elements, in the same way, by meditating upon Lord Vishnu, we purify ourselves and we become pure gold. So this is what this is saying, and just to make it clear, Lord Vishnu within the heart purifies the minds of the yogis. So where is Lord Vishnu? Everywhere. Where is God? Everywhere. But primarily for us, God is there resident within our very own hridaya, within our very own heart. And it is by meditating upon God, upon Vishnu within the heart, that again, being in that divine presence, in the same way that that fire purifies the gold, in the same way we purify ourselves, by being in the very presence of God. So everything that has been described to you, both in these really 4 verses that we looked at, to be strictly technical, we've looked at 4 verses, but then also my commentary as well, explicating these verses, my exegetical analysis of these verses, make it very clear that this is indeed the way of the Vaishnava. This is what it means to be a Vaishnava. So if this is your goal, this meaning what? If your goal is to know God, not merely yourself, not merely Atma-jnana, not merely self-realization, not merely attaining mystical powers, not merely self-mastery, whatever that means. You see, you can master yourself interestingly in either a good way or a bad way. You see, a lot of powerful demons also have a lot of self-mastery. They have concentration, they have discipline, etc. You can even see demonic human beings in this world who actually, they have a lot of discipline. And they have some self-mastery. But no, if your goal is something far beyond all these and 100 or hundreds of other things that I can mention, if your goal is indeed, as I like to say, to not play games spiritually, but to indeed know what we in the West call God, the Absolute, Sriman Narayana, then the path for you is Vaishnava Dharma, the path that Acharyas have taught since the very beginning of time, the path that is followed by the majority of the gods themselves and the goddesses themselves, the path that is taught by the International Sanatana Dharma Society, the path that has been here in the material realm since before time and will be here after time. So with that, I very humbly thank you so much for being here and listening to my discourse. And with that, I will end my discourse here, and we have a little bit of time. I would like to see if there are any questions about Sanatana Dharma, very specifically. And I'll wait just a few seconds for the chat to catch up, because there is a little bit of a time delay. So there's a little bit of a gap between when I tell people they can start to ask questions and when I actually begin to see them. Very good. Very good. All right, I'm starting to see some questions, and I can see that there are some very good ones. There are always good questions. Actually, that shouldn't be a surprise that we have them today as well. Varsaga asks a very interesting question, actually, which a few people have asked me in the past, and I'm sure others have thought about this as well, but it's important. Namaste, Acharyaji. Is suicide ever justifiable in the Vedic tradition? If a soldier is captured by an enemy in war, who are demonic, and they plan to torture him, would he be justified in suicide? Excellent question. Very good question. Let me speak about this first a little bit broadly, but then speak very specifically to your question, and that is about warriors, very specifically. Generally speaking, and to my knowledge, and I could be wrong, there might be some tribal belief somewhere that disagrees with this, but as far as all the major civilized religions, ancient religions, pre-Abrahamic religions that I am aware of, they all pretty much agree that suicide is a negative thing. That if an individual commits suicide, especially because, they're just depressed, or they find that life is meaningless, or they've had some sort of emotional trauma, something like this, they've had some great loss, they had a lot of money and suddenly they lose it all overnight, or whatever the situation may be. To commit suicide in such circumstances is considered to be a terrible thing. And it's terrible for all people concerned. It's terrible certainly for the individual who decides to commit suicide. Indeed, in many cases, they end up becoming a ghost. Not every case, but in most cases, that is indeed what happens. So yes, it's something that is very much frowned upon. It's also something that is very bad for those individuals who are left behind, because the grief that is there for those loved ones of the individuals who committed suicide is indescribably terrible, actually. This is why I've actually counseled people, quite a few people, more people than my audience would even understand. I've counseled dozens and dozens of people actually who were quite suicidal, and seriously so. Even a few who were very seriously talking about, they had a plan, an actual plan and everything to commit suicide. This when an individual commits suicide, the vacuum that is left behind is indeed something that is just indescribable. And I've often spoken to individuals who, again, want to commit suicide, and this is what I'll tell them. I'll say, you think that your pain will end, and the truth of the matter is, I know, I've literally said this to people who wanted to commit suicide, I know that your goal is not to end your life. Your goal is to end your suffering. I know that, I understand. But this is not going to end your suffering, A. And B, do you understand the suffering that you will be giving to others? Those individuals who are left behind, your parents, your whoever, your loved ones, your friends, it's suddenly like there's a black hole that's there that doesn't go away. In time, it starts to become more distant. But yes, it's something that people should avoid as much as possible. Now, getting to your actual question here, and that is about Kshatriyas very specifically. Oh yes, soldiers are a very different question, of course, a very different situation. With soldiers, there are indeed situations where, of course, it's not that they are doing something to, let's say, purposefully end their life. They're not doing this, because they're sad, they're depressed, they're traumatized. But no, there are certainly situations, and we know this. Anyone who's been in the military knows this. Sometimes, indeed, you choose to die, for example, to save your comrades. There are individuals who, we hear this all the time, all throughout the 20th century, 21st century. The enemy will throw a hand grenade, into your camp, and all your friends are right there. Everyone's about to die, and one person will choose to throw themselves on top of that hand grenade so that it will kill only them. Well, that's killing themselves, but that's heroic. It's a very different thing to choose to end one's life in a heroic way. Again, not out of sadness or depression, which would then lead to an individual most likely becoming a ghost. And in this particular situation as well, I would say that yes, if an individual, if they know that they are captured and the enemy is evil and demonic and they're just going to torture them to death, if they chose to commit suicide in that case, again, they would actually be doing a heroic act. They wouldn't be committing suicide because they were in enormous grief, but they would be very consciously doing so, also to help their side as well, because who knows, maybe these evil individuals are going to torture them to get secrets from them, and they don't want to give out those secrets because, again, they want to help their friends. Well, again, it's a very different situation. So it's very different for soldiers who are in war. It's not suicide per se, but it's rather heroically giving your life for your cause. So I went a little bit deep into that, but it's because it's a very important topic. I want people to be very clear about the difference between suicide versus being truly a warrior and giving your life consciously to help your comrades. Very different thing. Very good. Very good. As always, I'm not having a difficult time finding good questions. On the contrary, my problem right now is the opposite. I'm trying to choose which of these many good questions I have time to answer. So please give me a moment. Here is a very, very good question from Jacob Scott. Namaste Acharyaji, how does one help someone out of demonic New Age mindsets and onto a more positive spiritual path? Why do people seek refuge in crystals and ghosts over God? And you could probably expand that list tremendously as far as New Age people. They would rather worship anything, sadly, other than God. But yes, it's a very important question, and I'm sure it's a question that's important to you and to many people, because everyone knows individuals who are just lost in a New Age mindset. And as far as how to help such individuals, first of all, before I talk any deeper about this, let me first say this. It's a sad fact. Ultimately, we need to understand in our attempt to help a multiplicity of people that ultimately you can't help literally everyone. There will always be one or two or more individuals who you just can't help. But you still should want to anyway. And of course, when I say help, I don't mean bothering people, preaching to them, anything like that. But if we have someone who's close to us who we know is in one way or another, but especially spiritually, being damaged by a more New Age mindset, then certainly in a very gentle sort of way, we should certainly try to help them as much as possible. The best way to do this is, again, in a very positive way, not by berating them. You see, it's so unfortunate that when it comes to even individuals who have a very good heart and really mean well, sometimes in their zeal to help others philosophically or spiritually, they will berate people. This is not something that we ever want to do. Rather, if this is someone we care about, someone who is somewhat close to us or very close to us, we should try to always speak to them very kindly. First of all, what we need to do is point out the negative aspects of New Age mindset. I was almost going to say New Age thought, but that's giving New Ageism too much credit, sadly. We need to point out the negatives, and I'm not going to give a long list of the negatives. We have several very long videos where I go extremely in depth, systematically, into what are many of the problems with the New Age movement. If you haven't had a chance, look at those videos. So first you want to point out, again, in a kind way, that, this is the problem with the New Age movement. It focuses on everything but God. It's very money-oriented. It's radical universalism. In other words, it has no discernment, no discrimination for what is a good path, what's a positive path. It's radically subjective. Oh, whatever you think is good for you, that's your truth, and on and on and on. Again, I said I wasn't going to give a list, but I'm starting to. There are so many negative, and not just negative, spiritually damaging aspects to New Ageism that you can point out to the individual. But then it's not enough to simply do this. It's not enough to simply be a critic. And this is where Sanatana Dharma comes into play and is so helpful. Because now in you understanding Sanatana Dharma to the best of your ability, you now can present a positive and real alternative. Because you see, to simply take away what a New Age person has, that's not enough. In fact, that's actually almost kind of cruel, to simply take away and not replace it with something good. Because for a lot of New Age people, their New Age ideas are a crux. They are something that they're dependent upon emotionally. So in addition to critiquing the New Age movement for them, you also want to present them with what is authentic, what is real spirituality. And I must assume that is why you are here. Through all these videos, through the books that we have, etc., you now have the ability to present to them the eternal, natural way, Sanatana Dharma. Not something made up, not something born in the 60s, but something that quite literally is eternal. Something that has been here, and we'll pretend that we're modern atheistic scholars. Something that has been here for at least multiple thousands of years. But we know better. It's been here eternally. Actually, always shall be here. So this is what you do. Critique the negative in a kind way, but also present the positive. And when I say present, and this is the last thing I'm going to say, certainly present them with the philosophy. Again, get our books, give them our books, direct them to our videos. But more than this, Present Sanatana Dharma to them by you yourself being an example. Being an example of an individual who has actually attained the goal of true and authentic spirituality. Be a person who, when this New Age individual sees you, what do they see? They see someone who's peaceful. They see someone who's kind. They see someone who is wise. They see someone who is virtuous. They see someone who is noble. They see someone who seeks excellence in everything that they do. And on and on and on. So give yourself as an example to this individual. As far as why, this is the last part of your question, why do people seek refuge in crystals, ghosts, etc. over God? Because we have free will. Because individuals are here because they are in illusion. You see, individuals are here because the vast majority are seeking everything but God. And what individuals, for the most part, even individuals, and this is the part that unfortunately confused too many people, even individuals who claim to be spiritual, the vast majority of them are actually seeking something material. They're seeking something to boost their ego. They're seeking power, control, etc., etc. They're seeking to dominate others. They're seeking magic. This is why, sadly, people will play, and the word is play, they're not serious. This is why left-hand path individuals, this is why New Age individuals, this is why people who practice magic with a K on the end, etc., etc., they're playing. They're not practicing real spirituality because, again, to get back to my talk, they are not seeking the highest because they're still in the illusion. It actually is a minority of individuals, including individuals who call themselves spiritual. It's a minority who actually are truly seeking the highest without playing games. So that's why many people would rather worship anything before they worship God. They're in illusion, and they wish to stay there. Very good. Very good. We have a few minutes. This is a good question from Nick. I'm going to attempt to answer this. I've talked about this quite a few times actually, but it's always important. And I'm going to try to answer this somewhat briefly, but at the same time, hopefully it will be a satisfying answer to your question. And that is namaste, and thank you as always, Sri Acharya-ji. Absolutely my pleasure. Why is the caste system something that is espoused in the Orthodox Vedic system? Will you dispel misconceptions? Is it merely for ontological reasons? Very good. And I may or may not be able to get to your second question, but I'll start with this one at least. Yeah, several things that I need to say about this. Indeed, first of all, when it comes to the caste system, we don't use that term, and the reason why is for the same reason we don't use the term Hindu or Hinduism, is because they have nothing to do with Vedic spirituality. The caste system, indeed, caste is a Portuguese word. It's not a Sanskrit word. A lot of people don't know this, but I have a PhD in this. I've studied this for 45 years. Caste is from castus, which is Portuguese. The Portuguese first used this word in order to point to what was already, sadly, a corrupt system of Varna. That is, Varna became corrupted due to many, many influences. By the time that Europeans, especially the Portuguese, the Spanish, the English, French, etc., by the time that they began arriving in India and trying to understand what this was that they were looking at, this Vedic civilization, etc., yeah, they unfortunately had many, many, many misconceptions about Varna, and even at that point, Varna had become corrupt. And I don't want to go very deeply into the reasons why. Let me just say Abrahamic influence. Abrahamic influence that put pressure upon the Varna system that was so bad to the point where what was at one time a very logical system that looked at the psychophysical nature of the individual and then determined what Varna they belonged to, it became rigidified to the point where many Hindus began to have this very false idea that, oh, now it's all in accordance with birth. If your parents are Shudras, even if you're somebody with an IQ of 160 and all you want to do is to be a yogi, sorry, you're a Shudra. Go pick up a hammer. That is sadly what we now call the caste system. So and not just myself, many Vedic leaders and gurus today actually make this very important distinction between the caste system, which again is this very unjust idea that I just enunciated, which is a modern perversion. And when I say modern, I'm talking about it goes back maybe as far as 1,000 years, which Vedically that's modern. So there is the caste system versus the Varna system. Varna is the original system. And the idea of Varna is what I said, that you look at the actual psychophysical nature of the individual. I don't have them in front of me right now, but I have seen so many Vedic verses that explain what I'm about to tell you. Indeed, there is one very short but entire Upanishad that actually explains this. That indeed it is not in accordance merely with one's birth, but in accordance with, as I keep saying, one's psychophysical nature. And that indeed an individual can be, quote unquote, born a Brahmin, that is, their parents are Brahmins, but according to the Vedic scriptures, if that person is not living a Brahminical lifestyle, that person is not a Brahmana, that person is something else. So indeed, it looks at the individuals, what their psychophysical nature is, and then a Varna is indeed assigned to that individual. So if an individual is, speaking of Brahmanas, if an individual is very philosophically oriented, intellectual, peaceful, spiritual, they tend to veer toward professions like teaching, scholarship, doing ritual, being a priest, etc. That is a Brahmana. Now again, who the parents are doesn't matter. If you are an individual who you fit all those criteria, you are a Brahmana. If an individual, on the other hand, is someone who is more leadership oriented and a little bit more fiery, they're a good leader, they're a good administrator, they're someone who they are a warrior, a soldier, they can rule a nation, they can lead an army, etc. That is a Kshatriya. If an individual, now third, if an individual is a producer, that is an individual who can create wealth, can create produce, literally be a farmer, etc. Someone who is more money oriented, who is more capitalistic oriented, etc. That is an individual who is a Vaishya. And then finally, the fourth category is very different from the other three, because with the other three, with the Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, and Vaishyas, all three of these individuals tend to use their intelligence to a very great degree. But then when you find individuals who, and it's not that they're not intelligent, but their natural inherent proclivity is rather than using their mind as their career option, they want to use their hands. They love building things. They're skilled craftsmen, etc. That is an individual who is a Shudra. So again, this is the distinction between what we today call the caste system versus actual Varna, is that Varna makes sense. Varna is logical. Varna takes into account the fact that when you look at the totality of human beings who are around us, what you see is indeed, as I said before, great diversity. From individuals who are great philosophers to individuals who just give them a hammer and they're in bliss. You see this great diversity. Well, what do you do with it? You order it logically. And you reward people in accordance with their own natural predisposition. And thus, ideally, everyone's happy. The individual who they want to be a thinker, they can have a career as a thinker. The individual who, no, they're not really prone to deep philosophical thoughts. They really just want to, hammer wood. They're a carpenter. They can be happy doing what they want to do. So in this way, you take the diversity that is there in society and you harmonize it in such a way that people are naturally doing what is an expression of their natural propensity. That is Varna. And that's radically different from the caste system. We do not accept the caste system. Let me repeat this. The idea that regardless of what you are, what you want, what your psychophysical propensities are, the idea that, oh, your parents are something, now you have no choice but to have that career and thus be miserable for the rest of your life, that is anathema. That is something that Sanatana Dharma rejects. So I hope that answers the question. Very sadly, I need to stop there because it's already past the hour. We've gone over by about 5 minutes. And I know that even with you, Nick, you had a second part to the question, but sadly I need to stop there. But again, we will meet, of course, again next Monday. And hopefully every Monday we will get together. So that being the case, please feel free to ask your questions again if they weren't answered this time. Once again, I thank all of you for being here very, very much. And I ask you to please come again. Please make this a regular part of your life if you haven't done so already. You know, we do this in order to have people have a sense of spiritual community. You know, we started doing these live streams, you know, because I've been a spiritual teacher for decades and decades actually. But we only started doing these live streams very specifically when the whole COVID thing hit the world. And we understood that people were now, many of them, not everyone, but many people were trapped in their homes due to lockdowns and things like this. And we wanted people to not feel hopeless and not feel alone, and to feel that they were part of, even if just online, still a community. So this is indeed a community, and I welcome you, I invite you to please come again every Monday if you wish, and continue to be part of our community. Once again, I ask you to please subscribe to this channel if you have not yet done so. I ask you to please go to dharmacentral.com, and when you're there, please look at our many books that are available, and specifically now we have Introduction to Sanatana Dharma, a wonderful book that is precisely what the title says. It's meant to be an introduction to this truly vast and ancient path of Sanatana Dharma. Please look at we have a beautiful mantra meditations musical CD that is available as well. That is wonderful either as a meditative aid or to just have on in the background. Please join our email list when you can. And again, please consider becoming a member of the International Sanatana Dharma Society if these live streams and everything else that we do has been helping you in any way. Please consider helping us to continue to help others by donating in any way that you can. And again, if you go to dharmacentral.com, you'll see all the ways in which you can become a member or even just give a one-time donation. So with that, again, I thank you for being here. Please join us again next Monday. And namaste. Jaya Shriman Narayana. Jaya Bhagavan Shri Krishna. Jaya Shri Guru. Sanatana Dharma Jayate. Dharma Rashtra Jayate. Victory to Sanatana Dharma, the eternal natural way. Victory to the Dharma nation. Evam bhavatu. May it be so. And with that, everyone, between now and when we get together again, I ask you all to please take very, very good care of yourselves in every way.